Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's my computer's fine.
That's the walrus.
Oh, he has that his laptop is ready.
Just turn on your mic. Good to go? Sounds good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for I apologize. Sorry. Thanks for joining us today for this August 24th, 2026 at Deschutes County Board of County Commissioners meeting. We'll now call the meeting to order, and at the beginning of the meeting, we will review our agenda to see if there are any changes needed and to approve the agenda. Any requested additions, subtractions, or modifications?
No, so moved.
Second.
It's seconded. Any further discussion?
Just a moment, I support the process, kind of a little structural change, but just in case, if there's some topic that hey, let's talk about this today. It does, notify somebody at the beginning of the meeting that we got something that we're going to discuss. So that's kind of what I see is going on here. In case something's just live wire at the moment.
Yep, and also we were running into things that might need to be added to the agenda, a couple of days beforehand after the agenda had been publicized. And this is also an opportunity for us to make any additions that are necessary to stay within public meeting. Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote. Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay, so next on our agenda is citizen input. Is there anyone in the room who would like to provide public comment today?
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask Deborah if there's anyone. Is there anyone online with their seeing no citizen input, we'll move on to commissioner announcements. The commissioner announcements for this meeting.
The Behavioral Health Advisory Board Committee meeting was on Friday afternoon, so it's just a good moment for everybody to get together. Kind of a quiet summertime meeting. We just had a quorum, looking for a few folks to be able to join this, or a little bit of a recruitment effort, which is what we talked about last month. And working with the Regional Health Improvement Plan, kind of looking at the specific line items in there for behavioral health.
From the beacon.
And we did have the managed cap meeting on Thursday. Everything is progressing forward. And thank you to the group that is going to be running the camp. And apparently, so we had like 10 pets today. So it sounded like almost everybody had a pet that moved in.
I know. Yeah, actually, it presents an opportunity for people to not have to be separated from their pet. Okay, I'll just mention that this afternoon, the Coordinated Homeless Response Office is meeting at 4, and then the Regional Housing Council is meeting at 5:30. Right. Pending those. Any other announcements? Okay. Seeing none, we can go on to our regular action item agenda. The first item on our agenda today is a work session on the amendments to the Deschutes County Code for the ambulance service area. And I see we have Tom Kuhn, Chris Bell, and Jared Jeffcott.
Jared's not here. I'm filling in for him. Drew Norris.
Yeah, Jared, thanks for joining us.
Jared was on vacation, so he wasn't able to join. But luckily, Drew was able to be here with us.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hey, give me a second here. I'm having a little troubles logging
while you all are getting set up, it does give me a chance to ask a question or two about just this bundle of materials. If I am tracking correctly, there were both red line copies and kind of finished without red line copies of the materials in the packet. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I read and then I started reading and that the later part of the packet, I was like, I think I've read this before. So it was just wanted to clarify that that was the case.
Apologize, I have two different Zoom accounts and it was defaulting to the wrong one and then I. Yeah.
Well, we know the audio was working at one point.
Yeah.
Zoom will get you every time. Waiting, I could ask the rest of our panel, and one of the things I was wondering about was just what's going on in the world of ambulance services and ambulance service areas across the state. Are there interesting trends to to be aware of, or big things, big changes coming, or
Nothing crazy across the board. I know a lot of people are updating their ambulance service plans and everyone's kind of trying to get on the same page with how they look and how they're presented. Because there's been so many of them over the years. Some of them haven't been updated for a long time. There's some legislation for some interfacility transfer stuff that they're looking at to maybe from like hospital to hospital and how those are divvied up, and whether the ambulance service area, like the provider in that area, so us for Bend, would have first right of refusal versus maybe giving it to somebody else, like the hospital potentially, to be able to have that, which it's really early on, so I can't really comment much on it. But that's one thing that I've heard.
interesting. And does this plan take care of those possibilities, or is that why we need legislation so that?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of a divided opinion on how that should look. And this goes back to the traditional method where each ambulance service area provider has that first right of refusal to do those or not, or subcontract out with somebody else if they would like.
But I know we went through the exercise with the the Pine Fire District specifically to add the opportunity to put the next unit on the run card, right? It's like 1, 2, and 3 is my understanding is how it's working. Hasn't, the private company wasn't able to hold up to that, but we did allow them to be on the run card, you know, the third call or whatever it was gonna be.
Yep, and that worked out during the time period really well for the
Yeah.
line. Because before chief was there, but you know, we still work with some other privates in the area and are able to have like some statement of understanding with them to be able to work together on things that we don't have the ability to do and they do. So it's nice to have that in there.
Good, it's good to hear.
Are there, in our region, are within Deschutes County, there are no franchisees that aren't public entities, is that correct?
That is correct.
Franchise, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so there's private operators out there that can work with the franchisees, but you know, the franchises themselves are.
yeah, they're typically in all fire departments within regions that do EMS as
Yeah.
well.
So there's nowhere in the state is there a franchisee that's not a public entity? or-
No, there are, yes.
Okay.
In like Multnomah County, in
Yeah.
Washington County, they have AMR and Metro West, who are
Right.
private ambulances. But they work with them.
Washington County, Twelve Valley.
Oh, Washington County,
Yeah,
yes.
Twelve Valley, took over 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And Clackamas
I
County.
just saw it popped up.
Yeah, Clatsop County, that's, that is,
Yeah, a lot of the coastline has private ambulances as their ASA holders.
Interesting.
Might be able to just email the presentation, if somebody else has put it up.
Yeah, it's just Chris, I'm gonna go email to you. Sorry about this. Yeah, I could do that.
It's another high level. It looks like there's references back to state law a little bit more. Is that one of the scenarios here? The fact that and you know, it talks about OAR 333 and all that. Was that kind of guiding light for this content? Is in aligned with this, what the state's doing? Does anybody have a feel for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the references to general state law were to keep it flexible for changes in state law as far as just the reference to the numbers and what the OARs and the statutes.
Did they send it to you?
So we wouldn't have to go back in and change them, you know, every time to change the legislation or whatnot, but
Was that a driving factor? Was there a driving factor of the state legislation recently, or is that just our timing and our?
I think part of it was this MS modernization effort, which I don't know if you can explain a little more, because I'm.
Yeah, the state, like so, state and Oregon Health Authority look to kind of change the structure of how they administer all ambulance service areas and some things in the state. So with those rules that they came out with, and it's just a lot of them are different committees and groups and like ETAB areas for like reviewing trauma, reviewing certain things. They changed that structure a little bit, try to make it a little bit more modernized. And so a lot of these things that we try to address were within that as they're moving forward. They're still in the process of making those changes.
I'm gonna be able to add a little bit to that too. So part of it was, a lot of the ASAs throughout the state too were just reiterations of very, very old plans. So I believe that, I think Multnomah County was the very first like revised new kind of copy there. And so Oregon Health Authority and the state were kind of moving towards a revision of the ASA plan even prior to the modernization of the EMS Act. Now there's some provisions within that that could somewhat changed some of the requirements for the ASA, but nothing, it's nothing like that's super heavy or major or something like that. It didn't do. But yeah, that process was kind of already in place prior to that. Yeah.
I think a lot of it was as far as driving the changes that you're going to see within the document and as just generally part of Tom's presentation. There was also just I think an observation in the committee with what happened a few years ago. And by me, just because I'm a lawyer, I like clean language. There was a lot of duplication and quite frankly, there was some mismatching or inconsistencies between the code and the plan that we noticed. Kind of a lot of that sort of arose in the circumstances that happened a few years ago with Lapine Fire. After that, we took a long, hard look at those documents and also just kind of I think the committee really talked a lot about how those documents, which again are very old, I think they were 25, 30 years old, compared to how things actually work for franchisees, both internally for each franchisee, but also how they interact and how they contract. You know, I think there was some desire to make things more flexible for people to be able to, for instance, subcontract when they need to, define what types of things should be easier to subcontract for and what types of things maybe when you're talking about, again, the fact that there are established franchisees, what we need to kind of protect against. And there are a lot of inconsistencies and duplication as far as some of the enforcement and complaint procedures between the plan and the code. So we really wanted to clean that up, and I think we have. So there, I think those were a couple, both the EMS modernization, but also just kind of observations from the documents that as they existed as compared to what we're proposing to change them to. We also interacted a lot with the subcontractor who helped us immensely with especially the updates to the plan as far as just addressing issues that are just out there in general with the ASA, but also with EMS in general across the country. I think we got a lot of good input from the contractor on that sort of thing. So thank you.
Okay, and we're ready to get going. I apologize.
Back to square one.
I have 2 Zoom accounts and it.
I just didn't pay. both of them,
Uh-oh,
so-
get your credit card out.
We have a shared account now at Public Health, so that's one of the reasons. But anyways, thank you for having us here today. I'm Tom Kuhn from Deschutes County Public Health, and I'm here today in my role as ambulance service area for the county. And I have with me, did you introduce yourself already, Chris?
No, I haven't. I'm Chris Bell from County Legal.
And I'm Drew Norris with Ben Fire. I'm our EMS chief.
Yeah, we have a couple of our ASA members with us, so Chief Holsey back there as well. So anyways, we're here today to talk about the revisions to the county code and the plan. If you could go to the next slide. And the purpose of this presentation is to give an overview, brief overview of the ASA. I know all of you are pretty familiar with it over the years, and just gonna run through that quickly. Review the process we use to revise the code and overhaul the plan. I changed it from just revise the plan to overhaul because I thought it was definitely much more than just revisions, whereas the code had a little bit less of an overhaul done to it. And then a brief overview of the primary areas that were revised and answer any questions. But of course, feel free to stop me at any point. Okay, next slide, please. And so just to review the purpose of the code and plan, it ensures all the areas of the county have qualified 911 EMS transport service providers. That's like one of the major parts of it. It establishes the boundaries for those providers. It ensures they're in compliance with Oregon revised statutes and administrative rules. And it gives us the ability to respond and investigate any complaints about the franchises or private providers. And establishes the ASA committee and provides the committee with guidelines. So that's the general view of what the ASA is about. Just through, next slide, please. Just threw in a map of the ASA county coverage area. As you see, we do in spots extend into other counties. Usually that's logistically due to all of, you know, where we have the EMS available, and sometimes the smaller counties don't have EMS close by in those very rural areas. Next slide, please. Once again, overview of all the franchise ASA members. They have their logos up there: Bend, Black Butte, Crooked River, Lapine, Redmond, Sisters Camp Sherman, and Sun River. And all of these groups have a representative on the ASA committee that fully participate in the process, and also many of who have helped me in revisions of the plan. And
So,
yes,
I have a question on the map, because I see it's over the pass and then it goes down to like where 20 and, you know, the way to Eugene. So who goes up there and picks up something? Does it come from Black Butte, or where do you send them up there?
yeah, there's a little color key if you're able to
Right.
read it.
Oh, okay, so I need to go to the color.
Yeah.
So Black Butte Ranch then is the one that's gonna have to go up there.
Yeah, in that
Okay.
particular instance, and
So they actually have a huge area.
yes, but it is a less populated area also.
Right, but I mean, there are a lot of accidents up there.
Yes, yeah, I think that's definitely Highway 20 is a lot of their calls are for things that motor vehicle accidents.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, sorry to take you back.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
And Sisters is in the area too, so if Black Butte doesn't have an available truck to go out there, then Sisters can provide.
Well,
support.
actually, I'm working right now on getting an urgent care in Sisters, because the fire department is having four people a day come to them for medical help, because we don't have that emergency, you know, situation. So it'll be interesting to see if we can pull it together. Just
Yeah.
because of all the tourists and everything that come through, plus the people who live there, they're always going to the fire station.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, yes, it would be great.
Okay, next slide. So, Chris covered some of this with you already. Why was the Cohen plan revised? Far back as I could tell, it was fully revised was 27 years ago, and I couldn't find any records that went further back than that. Also, Oregon Health Authority EMS program is now regularly enforcing compliance with the OAR 333-260 that defines the adoption and approval of ASA plans. Up till recent years, OHA EMS was very understaffed, and they really weren't enforcing any compliance with the plans. And then in the last few years, they've become much more visible and present, where I'm in communications with them fairly regularly, whereas like 5 or more years ago, I hardly heard a peep out of them other than every once in a great while. So due to that, we started this process to update the Cohen plan, and about halfway through, then OHA EMS started reaching out, hey, we're starting to get after all the ASAs in the state to request that they start revising their codes and plan. Luckily, we already started that process because we kind of foresaw that coming. So the Cohen plan are inconsistent in language, like where the code says one thing, the plan says maybe something slightly different. Want to clean that up. It doesn't incorporate some changes to best practices or some of the laws, so we want to make sure that's all up to date. The existing plan lacked clear relevant standards and also didn't have updated maps that are now required, so the new plan has more maps in it. And the Cohen plan currently existing create potential for liability and difficulty enforcement, as Chris discovered in the past when we were looking at it. That's kind of another thing that kind of got us in the direction of, hey, that we need to do something about this. Next slide, please. I want to just point out the difference between the code and plan. While the plan does exist as an appendix to the county code, the difference is that the county code is Deschutes County's code and law, and it's updated for this one in particular by county legal with support and input from me. And OHA EMS will not review county codes. County code appendix A, the plan, is updated by ASA committee, the administrator, county legal, local EMS related partners, and the hired contractor. So there's many people in that work sector that contribute towards the plan as kind of their guiding document as well versus the code being the law. And OHA EMS does review ASA plans for compliance. They have guidelines that we need to meet in order for it to be in compliance. I'll speak a little more about that portion in a second. So, Chris, this is your slide right here. Oh, next slide, please.
So as Tom had mentioned, you know, when we had the situation a few years ago, we had a complaint and an investigation, and we worked with Little Pine Rural Fire District's former chief on sort of resolving some differences as far as what could be done to generate new revenue and what was being done. Some of the things we're all familiar with what occurred. And what we really found out in the plan, but in the code a lot, was there were some inconsistencies. There was some lacking some clear standards, and some references to the law and whatnot. And so what we wanted to do was, first and foremost, in the complaint, the enforcement process, which was front and center in that situation, you know, that we were finding things just as simple as there would be a deadline in the code that was 14 days, and then there was a deadline in the plan that was 10 days for what could be seen as or were, you know, the same thing for response times and things like that. And so we worked to clean that up. Wanted to have clear, more robust terms about subcontracting of services. It became pretty apparent at that point in time that there really was not much, if at all, in the code or the plan about whether or not even subcontracting could be done, and then if it were, kind of what the standards were and what the process would be. So we gathered input from the committee and the franchisees as far as what they wanted and what they didn't want, what they thought would be easier, what they currently did. Really, there was just kind of a lack of standards, and so people were kind of doing things just as necessary and as needed without a real kind of generalized process. So we tried to nail that down a little bit better, so everybody kind of knew what the expectations would be, what kinds of services can be subcontracted, what kinds of services shouldn't be or can't be subcontracted. And so we put together more robust terms in that. There's a whole new section in subcontracting. Better transparency and information exchange from the franchisees to the ASA committee. There was really not a lot of requirements as far as what type of information, both at the inception of a franchise, through franchises or franchisees doing business, through working with other franchisees, and just kind of keeping the BOCC apprised in their role as the board for the ASA, for the county ASA and whatnot. And so we added a lot more robust terms as far as what's required for reporting, both at the initiation of a franchisee. And I think a lot of the franchises are coming up for, if not all of them, are coming up for renewal, I believe, in 2028.
Yep.
Is that correct? And so we really wanted to bolster that to make sure that the BOCC is in their role, is apprised of what's going on and given the information that we felt they should have in determining whether or not franchises should be renewed or put out, and also just in as far as things like cooperation between franchisees, what happens when a franchisee stops being a franchisee, what happens when franchises are transferred, what happens when services are transferred, things of that nature. And so we really bolstered that. Proof definition of processes from I guess I've sort of covered that. More precise definitions as far as what's required and what's prohibited. as far as things as granular as billing and whatnot, and then improve consistency within and between the code and the plan. Again, what we really observed is that there were inconsistencies, and we really needed to improve those. Again, those documents had been around for almost 3 decades, and I think when they were originally put together, that was, I think, when the whole notion of an ASA was first created and first came about. And so I think those documents were trying to do the best they could with the information they had. And so now, after almost 3 decades of trial and error and kind of the franchisees working under both the plan and the code, we kind of came to an updated code that really improved that lack of consistency and clarity.
Next slide, please. Hey, the ASA plan revision timeline, just to give you an overview of what we were doing since we first came to you in March of 2024, when the ASA committee requested funding to secure a contractor. So we began a competitive RFP process July through September of 2024. The ASA committee helped lead that process. In October 2024, Fitch and Associates was awarded the contract. They're based out of Texas, but they do this type of work with updating ASA plans nationally, and also have updated plans in Oregon also. So they're a pretty well-known entity. And the group felt they had a lot of the really core EMS experience that maybe some of the other applicants didn't have. Then November 24 through August 2025, Fitch and Associates had worked with our committees and some joint meetings, and then meetings with myself and Chris and our chair, Jared Jeffcott. And then also they tried to include some local stakeholders. They contacted some of the local hospital systems and asked for input. They didn't really get a lot of input at all from the stakeholders. So it was mostly input from like the ASA committee for what was needed for the plan. And the ASA committee did provide them with a lot of input. They finally delivered to us a complete revisions, but the thing is, they're looking at from their outside lens and not from the local Deschutes County lens. And there are many specific Deschutes County things that we know that they can't necessarily look up and find out themselves. So that's where the ASA committee members, people like Drew, Chief Halsey, Jared Jeffcott from Sun River Fire, and then also Dusty Miller from Redmond Fire. They all really gave me a lot of input in different areas where they had that special expertise related to what was going on here locally in Deschutes County. And it's not information you can just look up online. So we worked through that. And then in early February, I had to deliver the plan to OHA EMS for review. And what they always ask is, please let us review it to make sure you're in compliance before you take it to your commissioners for approval. Because if you do approve the updates to the plan, then I still have to take it back to OHA EMS for final approval following commissioner approval. So we submitted it to them. They did come back with a few changes they wanted made. And of course, that takes several months for that process to happen. And then our second revision we sent to them, they approved and said we were fully in compliance. And then at that point, we were ready to bring it to all of you for approval. Unfortunately, this happened right when summer was beginning, and trying to get people's schedules to coordinate was very difficult. And that's why we're here at end of August. So anyways, next slide, please. A little hard to see the visual that's on that slide, but basically that's from the administrative rule 33260, and it really lays out like the order of that they want your ASA plan to be in. So our original plan contained many of these elements within, but it wasn't necessarily in this exact format. So we lined it up exactly like the administrative rule. And that's where the contractor really helped organize all those things. And they really understand the administrative rules and what's needed. And also the contractor tried to include any standards related to EMS modernization. That's something that's being worked on at the state level to try to bring our EMS systems up to date, basically. And so that was another thing the contractor really helped with to get started. Here are the major changes to the plan. It now uses a word for word approved OHA EMS definitions and citations. We do have some definitions in there that are Deschutes County only, specific definitions, but we have to also include all the OHA definitions. And then we have to cite exactly where that's from. And so we had to make sure everything was lined up. We now have some maps to be part of the plan. A map showing ASA boundaries and response time zones, a map depicting all 911 fire district and incorporates city boundaries. All those maps are within sub-appendix A, which is kind of like the new document we're bringing forward to you, where it has different information, such as maps, contact information, and basically everything that OHA EMS requires as part of our plan. So there's some things that we didn't necessarily in the past think were super critical, but now OHA EMS is requiring that. And during this time, since we were opening up the plan and so forth, this was the opportunity to make any changes to ASA boundaries, just in case people felt like the old boundary definitions were maybe a little outdated and they should change a few boundaries. A few of the agencies discussed this, but then in the end, they said, just to keep it as is, it was fine. And maybe in the future, we'll revisit this. But there was so much going on with the plan at this time that they kind of felt maybe it'd be better to bring that as a separate issue sometime in the future, if necessary. Next slide, please. One more. Okay. This is just a couple sections. Because if you looked at the track changes version of the plan, it is marked up everywhere. It's really difficult to follow because it was an overhaul, but just a couple examples of areas that had significant changes. System elements in section 5 of the plan. System elements includes components, structure, and processes of the Deschutes County ASA. It covers things like how 911 calls are dispatched. That one we were pretty good with our 911 information, but we did update some parts of that. Chris Perry from 911 also gave a lot of input for that portion. Just a little more detail about how non-emergency inter-facility transfers are handled. Notification and response time standards brought up to scale with the new OHA standards. And then once again, just more references to OAR requirements for EMS services. So much of this added information was kind of like boilerplate info that they wanted in there. It's not necessarily things we're going to use all the time, but once again, it's part of the administrative rule that's in there, so we added it. Next slide, please. And then also section 6, coordination. This is a little bit more specific about how Deschutes County works in conjunction with other emergency response partners, mutual aid agreements. One thing I wanted to mention is because we're going through this process now, the fire chiefs in Deschutes County are working on updating their mutual aid agreement because it's somewhat dated at this time. So that's going on right now. It should be updated sometime in the near future, and that will be put on file with legal here once that's updated. Disaster response, Ben Duda from Emergency Management helped me out with a little bit with that section. So that's another one of our partners that helped. He helped with hazardous materials as well. And then specialized rescue, that's something like having to rappel into a canyon to get someone stranded or just very unusual wilderness situations where it's not like a normal part of day-to-day activities. And in sub-appendix A, there is a section that lists all the specialized rescue services that each provider has. Next slide, please. So, I mentioned the mutual aid agreements being updated. We are going to develop a franchise agreement, but we're gonna wait until the franchise terms renew in July 2028. So that's more work that's gonna start next year with getting ready for the franchise renewals, because the 10 years is finally coming to an end.
But it was 5 years right before that, right? So it
Yeah.
was extended to 10 years and now.
Yeah.
We're 10 years, oh boy.
Yeah, I know, it just seems like yesterday that it's 2018.
It
we
was
came to
previously
commission.
done every 5 years.
It was, and then the committee came and requested it's done every 10 years, and logistically, it really makes more sense to do it every 10 years. 5 years is fairly soon, especially since we are meeting regularly as a committee and I'm involved with oversight, so 10 years is fine. And I'm happy to say, I rarely get a complaint of any kind. I mean, just very minor stuff, and a lot of times it's stuff that falls outside of the ASA jurisdiction, so. But I am there as somebody that they can contact and I can refer them to whoever the appropriate contact is. And then I've talked so much about all the EMS rule changes, but there are gonna be more OHA EMS rule changes coming up, and they're working on that right now. We don't know exactly. They said they're hoping effective October 1st, they're gonna have some new rule changes. But they're not sure when we would be required to update our plan again. I'm sure sometime in the next year I'll have to come back to you. But it'll be a much smaller update to the plan. And then, as you see in my last bullet there, OHA EMS, my contact there, these were his exact words from an email. He said, Deschutes County has a well-developed plan that already does most of these updates. So I kind of felt like when they were reviewing our plan, they were asking us to do some things that they know are gonna be part of updates in the future to their rules. So they're just suggesting, hey, why don't you change this now? And then you don't have to change it when the updates go in effect on October 1st. So anyways, I'll be back again in next year for that as well. And then we have one recommendation. No decision needs to be made today because we're gonna have a first and second reading of what we've presented to you today. But after those readings, we're gonna request that the amendments made to the Deschutes County Code, Chapter 8.30 ambulance service area, and approve amendments to 8.30.100 Appendix A ambulance service area plan for Deschutes County, as well as adopt a new sub-appendix A, which is part of the appendix, which is the new document that we brought to you today. And
It'll be a public hearing on Wednesday also.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, public hearing on Wednesday. And yeah, we can go from there. So any questions?
So I think we both kind of came to that conclusion and it's been published for Wednesday's agenda, so we had the whole package already. As I was looking through it, just a couple references to the medical director, so Deschutes County EMS medical director. And I was wondering if there's gonna be, definitions. So under basic life support, what BLS means, it says approve, authorized by Deschutes County EMS medical director.
Yes, we have a medical director representative on the ASA committee, Dr. Rosenberg. Is that your medical director?
No, Dr. Reed and Dr. Kelly are
Yours, yeah, okay. Is Rosenberg yours? Yeah. Okay, I know, pretty sure he's Jared Sun Rivers and a couple other
Under
agencies.
dispatch calls, it says the PSAP shall have a medical director qualified for as a supervisory position. So it was just references to that and I didn't have a feel for.
Yeah, they have their own separate Dr. Peoples, and he reviews all of the calls that come into them. And we have a committee that, from the ASA, franchisees that go in and work through calls that come in and how they should be handled. And a lot of these doctors all work together in the ER. Yeah, they're all ER doctors, so they know each other and work very closely as well.
And at the dispatch level, that's real key if they have to change their cars for emergency medical dispatch system, that they're giving advice over the phone. So that's where that kind of comes in.
So that's pretty tightly controlled at that point.
Yeah, it's very difficult to change, even if it's kind of works. But they're
So we need him in the rock. We do need you in the record for your name and identification and everything for our minutes.
Eric Halsey, Fire Chief LaPont.
Thank you.
Then another page, a couple pages later talks about, within 4 minutes instead of 2 minutes. We're always changing the call response and I don't know, so notification and response times. Guess I lost track of where this is. It's in the red lines.
Yeah, so that basically was reviewed by in conjunction with Chris Perry from 911. And they had asked, OHA EMS asked if we could change some of our response times to align better with their current standards. So
So this is notification time. So receiving a call and having it dispatched back out or something like that. And it's going from 2 minutes to 4 minutes. Is that correct?
yes. Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was
Is
part.
that substantive? I mean, because that's those critical moments.
Yeah, not really. That was recommended to us by OHA EMS and you know, I reviewed it with Chris and he felt that worked for them.
From our experience, they're much faster.
Well, that's my thought. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is if all of a sudden there's just a high load, low staff and bad situation. And this is like, oh, we're not doing what we said we were gonna do. I'm sure it's a lot faster.
Especially for like cardiac
Most of the
arrest,
time,
and they don't have to go through all the questions, they can hear that someone's not breathing and push a button, they're getting them out right away.
Reference to supervising physician too. As I said, it just felt like I didn't have a feel for what all that was. You know, it's like another whole system out there that this thing's referencing all over the place. I don't know that it's bad. It was just,
Yeah, so
Well,
each agency has their own physician advisor, and then the county has one, and dispatch has one.
And I mean, if I remember correctly, back in the time when we were having, the, there were the tensions and concerns in the line. There was, you know, one of the issues was, you know, well, is the district able to basically overrule the recommendation by either the clinic or the hospital's, you know, medical experts. And so with this medical advisor role, have a role in smoothing those kinds of issues out if they came up again.
Yes, they could, but typically they help set our protocols and our standards of what we can treat with and what medications and how we go about the treatment that we give. Not so much do we transport or do we not transport this person.
And many things in the plan, the edits that were made are relevant to like our EMS ASA providers, but to the layperson might not make a lot of sense. So many things in here that are the standards, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, for me, you know, I don't really fully understand it without researching exactly what's going on. So, but this is like a working document for ASA providers. That's the intention of the plan.
You talked about how you and Chris have been, you know, thoroughly through all this stuff, but I mean, the full committee, the ASA committee has been, you know, has been through all of these documents.
Many times with
Okay.
Tom and with Chris, to review it and then send it back. And we worked with Fitch and Associates as well in a couple of meetings to make sure we're getting the language correct and how things actually operate in District County versus in Texas or wherever other places, so that we could have it work for what we needed.
And we had some key members that were a little more, gave more input than others too as well. But yeah, like I said, working with Deschutes County 911, emergency management. So you know, we kind of worked with everybody that's related. I also reached out to our public health preparedness coordinator and worked with her through a little section where we're referencing here, where public health is referenced. And yeah, so there was a lot of input. That also is the reason this process took so long, you know, and the good news is I've learned so much from doing this. that when we make future revisions, I would be able to do it. Because there was a huge learning curve, but now I would feel comfortable because I've gone through everything pretty thoroughly at this time.
Also too, that when this process started, and even before that, when the issues that you just referenced, Commissioner Chang, in Lapine started, I didn't even know what an ASA was. And so I really had to kind of learn trial by fire, and the committee and everybody involved in it were just amazing resources just to kind of know what was being talked about in the plan and kind of what was and the code and kind of what the goals were. Because I mean, oftentimes as a lawyer, when you're going into a very specific industry or whatnot, I mean, you have no idea what the practical aspects of what that presents and what that means. And to just have that as a resource, the committee was amazingly helpful, and the input was it was very collaborative, and I learned a lot more than I ever thought I would learn about ASAs and how ambulances and EMS services run. So
Yeah, now the committee kind of views Chris as a member of the committee as well. Gives a lot of input, and also just day to day, he gets emails, here and there from ASA members. They always work through me, or copy me on it. But a lot of times there's some real specific legal things that come through to Chris. Now we have a resident ASA legal expert, so.
Resume builder.
Just think you can go work in Texas.
Yeah, right, that comes out.
So under the communications system, the system access talks about the PSAP is also equipped with text and 911 capabilities. So it's interesting to see that written in here. I don't know whose motivation that was, which is fine, because I know that that's basically just the beginning for the next gen 911. There'll be, position information, and then also, audio, visual, live feeds or whatever could happen. And it's just like right over the horizon, right?
Yeah, we utilize a thing called Pulse Point. If you guys aren't sure, it notifies you if you're a quarter acre or a quarter mile within a public facility and a cardiac arrest goes down, and that's run through our dispatch system. It's like I have it on my phone, so if there was a cardiac arrest in this building right now, I'd get a text and it would give me directions on how to get there, be able to start care early before the units arrive.
And communication, Chris Perry also gave input. There are certain sections, anything that's 911 related, he reviewed everything and made any edits.
There are more questions or comments from commissioners?
I'm just glad I didn't have to be taken in the ambulance when I got hit by the tent a couple
Oh,
years ago.
yeah.
The other woman did.
Yep.
Yeah, no, because the pop-up tent popped up and came down on two of us. But anyway, I had blood everywhere, but I drove home to see my husband first, because he was an ear, nose and throat doctor. Anyway, I'm like, oh, I'm sure I'm fine, right?
I guess I didn't hear about that.
Oh, no, yeah, no, we were doing a dedication ceremony for the North Bend for ODOT, and they had a pop-up tent. And they didn't have any weights on the pop-up tent. And the dirt devil picked it up and came down, and I could see it, but my purse weighed so much, I'm like trying to get out of the way, and it hit me like, it could have been really awful, but I was just lucky. I just had a lot of blood. And it wasn't, my nose wasn't broken. But yeah, no, the other woman did go in the ambulance. So I proved that I was a horse person, right? Because you're used to a lot of blood and you can handle it.
On the blood vessels. Okay, well, if there's no further questions or comments in preparation for our hearing on Wednesday, then to wrap up for today, and will some of the franchisees be at the meeting on Wednesday as well?
They'll be sent an invitation to the meeting, so kind of like today.
Yeah, I was trying to think about for a public hearing, who would actually show up to give testimony or input on at a hearing like that. Like, maybe it just seemed like the franchisees were the most likely people to provide any input.
Yeah.
But just trying to get a feel for that.
And many of them are on vacation right now. I was on vacation last week myself, so. Yeah, this time of year is just all to be here.
Okay, well,
Either on vacation or taking care of tourists.
Yeah, so or that.
Yes, so I've been really busy one way or the other.
Totally.
All right, well, if there's no further questions for today, we'll see some of you at least on Wednesday.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Number 2 on our agenda, the treasury report.
Yeah, I don't know, my husband had a third time, but yeah, he brought you to the hospital.
Yeah.
Anyway, you go to the hospital, Jason moved. And I go, honey, yeah, I know, but he goes, so then you run in the door and you say, it's having a heart attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just. So you guys can have.
Thank you so much. But let's go ahead and give Bill some room to come up to the.
I don't. Yeah, my kids are too.
I know.
That's always gonna be the answer until
I know.
another 5-6 years.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
Okay, thanks. See you soon.
See you soon. 2026 treasury report.
If we have Tom Kuhn on the agenda, then we have Bill Kuhn on the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. Interesting aside, I had a meeting out at the hospital. By the way, for the record, I'm Bill Kuhn, Sheets County Treasurer. And I was involved in a meeting at the hospital this morning and we were talking about the expansion of our ED. Bringing in a modular unit, could be up and running as early as the end of September. And it's gonna add up to 11 additional exam rooms out there. So we have a huge bottleneck in the ED at certain times. So moving forward with addressing that. Again, thanks for allowing me to present the July Treasurer's Report. As I usually do, I take a couple minutes and provide a high-level overview of current economic conditions. Sound a little bit like a stuck record. We still have an extreme focus on geopolitical risk. Back at center stage with the announcement last week that the US is ramping up economic warfare. And Iran has threatened retaliation. Really the focus, and there were a few more details that were released this morning, but this is kind of a secondary focus, focusing on individuals, corporations, and countries that continue to do business with Iran. And are really trying to put a stranglehold on economic activity within Iran. And this action has again effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz and avoided the 60-day ceasefire. And big picture ongoing issues continue to focus on ultimate control of the strait and Iran's nuclear program. And it doesn't appear that there's really any easy off ramps to resolve this conflict at this time. It's going to be kind of more of the same for the immediate future. The rising costs associated with the ongoing conflict continue to have an impact on US government borrowing costs, with shorter term and long term bond yields remaining elevated, with 2 and 3 year yields at 4.11 and 4.18% respectively. The 30-year mortgage rate remained elevated at roughly 6.59% at month end. And this is driven by a 10-year treasury yield that's currently at 4.631%. On a related note, it was announced that total US government debt announced last week, it now exceeds $40 trillion. Our federal debt has increased by 50% since 2019. In terms of kind of understanding what 40 trillion means, I heard an interesting comparison last week that it roughly equates to the value of all single family homes in the US. So if you took that cumulative value of single family homes in the US, that roughly equates to $40 trillion. With this news, it's also estimated that annual interest costs on this debt have risen to a record 1.2 trillion right now. And at the end of last year, I think we were roughly at $1 trillion in debt servicing costs. And that also now exceeds our annual defense budget. That was last year's budget, not what's being proposed right now. On the heels of this news, Treasury Secretary BOCC announced that the Fed would be doubling the level of long-dated bond buybacks, where they're essentially creating a secondary market to stimulate demand and hopefully reduce yields. What this is essentially debt reshuffling, not a debt reduction. And so far, this had a slightly positive impact on overall bond yields last week, mostly in long-dated 10 and 30-year bonds. But the underlying reason for higher yields still exists, which is heavy government borrowing, ongoing fiscal uncertainty, persistent inflation risk, and growing competition for capital. There's also been a wave of corporate bond issues, which are actually, basically creating capital or competition for US government bond issuances. And also the rollover effect that happens at these auctions where bonds mature and then they have to be reissued. So there's kind of taking care of the existing debt that's already out there in the market, and also new issuances to fund continued government needs there. Surprisingly, a latest CPI report for July showed that inflation declined by 0.1%, not much, but it was a decline, and it decreased the annual pace to 3.4% year over year. Over the month, gasoline prices, and again, we're talking about in July, dropped substantially due to the 60-day ceasefire with Iran, which has now been terminated. Even excluding food and energy products, prices were broadly flat for the month. So that was a little bit of positive news in July on inflation. It's now expected that when we see the August numbers, that number is going to likely tick up with the increase in energy costs, and then there's still a lot of inflationary pressure in food. With this news, the market is expected that the Fed will hold rates steady during the next Fed meeting, which is scheduled for September 15th and 16th. In congressional testimony several weeks ago, Chairman Warsh said that cooler June and July inflation doesn't mean that the Fed can rest easy for the remainder of the year, but it does mitigate the sense of urgency to adjust policy and rates higher. So right now, the market does not expect a rate increase when they meet September 15th and 16th. The July jobs report showed the US economy unexpectedly lost 27,000 jobs during the month, which was significantly below analysts' expectations of adding 80,000 jobs. So it's about 120,000 job swing from the estimate to actual. However, this is the kind of reading between the numbers. The unemployment rate dropped slightly to 4.1%, which was caused by a decline in the labor force participation rate. So fewer people looking for work, not necessarily more jobs available.
But John, excuse me, Bill, the one good thing about that number was it was government jobs, wasn't it, like fewer 58,000? Before I knew that, I said to my
Private
husband,
enterprise.
thank goodness. I go, well, I hope it's government jobs, and it was.
It was, yeah. And earlier this year, where we saw a lot of the job growth was actually in federal and state job creation.
The really tragic number is if you pull up inflation from 2019 to today, it's 30.61. It's inflation is so bad that people, their salaries. When are their salaries going to catch up?
Disposable income has taken a huge hit in terms of just, we haven't seen the wage inflation like we had previously, and day-to-day costs have continued to stay elevated. And so, again, it's having an impact on how people choose to spend their discretionary dollars. The July producer price index, which tracks what businesses are paying one another, rose again. It increased 0.1% month over month. And this also indicates, and I've talked about this previously, is that pipeline pressure on future CPI numbers is still out there. And I think that's going to continue to impact consumer prices as well as a result of that. Over the past few months, I've been tracking the consumer sentiment index, with the July index decreasing increasing by 1.4%, primarily due to concerns over business conditions in the labor market. In July, existing home sales fell 1.7%, hitting roughly a 4.06 million annualized number. And this dip was likely and highly influenced by average 30-year mortgage rates that hit 6.69% at the end of July, which was up from the early March lows as global tension pushed up borrowing costs. And I thought this was an interesting comparison. Earlier this year, when rates briefly touched below 6%, the typical household had roughly $30,000 in additional buying power than with current rates at over 6.5%. So basically, they could buy a home for $30,000 more than what they can today because of that lower rate. And so that's also impacting home sales. Let's see. And again, at a regional level, I typically provide data on various markets within Deschutes County. The July Bend single-family residential market revealed a median sales price that increased to $780,000, which was up from $728,000 in June. With 187 sales for the month of July, 61 of these sales were above $1 million, and 57 of these were cash sales. So we continue to see a very high percentage of those total sales being cash buyers, which obviously are not influenced by or impacted by high mortgage rates. It is interesting the days on market for sold properties remained relatively low at 27 days, so less than 30 days from listing to sale. But the inventory levels have increased now to a 3.5-month supply of homes currently listed. And that's up from earlier this year, we were at about 1.5 months supply of homes on the market. Bend area single family building permits were down to 29 compared to 38 for the month of June. Redmond statistics saw median price that rose to $525,000 compared to $515,000 in June. And Redmond area permits actually jumped to 58 in the month of July compared to 38 for the prior month. A median sales price increase for the month, and total number of sales in the Redmond area dropped from 69 in June to 44 in July. So they're actually, they saw a higher number of higher priced homes sell, but fewer of them in July than what they experienced in June. Looking at other markets within Deschutes County, Sisters had a $753,000 median sales price on 19 sales. Sun River was $885,000 median sales price on 13 sales. And La Pine came in at $396,000 on 8 sales. As I typically report to the board, I just received a copy of the Q2 2026 Compass Commercial Report. And that actually validates what I've been reporting for the last several months. There's now, over the last 2 years, there's been a total of 1,187 multi-unit units or multifamily units that have been delivered to the Bend Redmond market, with another 1,406 units under development. So these are units under construction that have not been finished yet and are not available for lease. Vacant inventory now exceeds over 1,000 units. And that number's been building in that kind of pipeline for quite a while. At current absorption levels, it could take up to 5 years to work through the excess supply, assuming no additional development. So that's normal absorption. It's going to take roughly 5 years to work through that supply number right now. Now, obviously no shock here, but the newer Class A properties, which are the units that are being developed right now, and these are the high-end properties that have a lot of amenities, but they've experienced the greatest pressure driven by higher rent thresholds and increased competition. In contrast, workforce housing and what they call Class B and C properties continue to demonstrate strong occupancy and relative stability, reflecting sustained demand at more attainable price points. And again, no news there, but the units that are staying full, or the properties that are staying full, that have somewhat limited vacancy, are the ones that are really targeting kind of workforce housing and affordable housing. So, any questions on any of that?
Go back to the geopolitical risk.
Yeah, any thoughts on what the breakdown of the trade negotiations with Canada are going to?
Boy, that's an evolving situation. Last week, it sounded like they had a deal on the table, and this morning, sounds like they're moving forward with implementation of 50% tariff. And again, it's hard to combat the verbal warfare versus what's actually happening behind the scenes, but that could have a significant impact. They're a huge trading partner with the US.
The biggest.
Yeah, so more to come there, but again, on Friday, it appeared that they had a plan in place, and then this morning it was announced that they were, moving forward with implementation of a 50%.
From our last year and a half of experience, is there any kind of patterns of what happens when we impose heavy tariffs on?
Drives costs up, pure and simple. Primarily,
So that might show up in
Canada is
inflation.
a huge energy supplier, agricultural products and forest products. And so those three areas, I think in particular, could see a significant impact if that tariff is implemented. So more to come. It's evolving. The headlines change day to day. So without further ado, our July treasurer's report, the portfolio balance stood at $321.4 million at month end, which was a decrease of $7.2 million from June and an increase year over year of $15 million from last year. This decrease is primarily due to ongoing funding needs. And also, we are in that kind of low cash flow cycle in our annual cycle right now, July, August, and September, before we start to get back into tax collection. So we're gonna continue to see that portfolio likely decline over the next few months, and then we'll see an influx from tax receipts towards the end of the year. Net investment earnings stood at $995.1 thousand for the month. That's the first time in a long time it's been under $1 million for the month, which was 25.7 thousand lower than last month's earnings and 35.1 thousand lower than a year ago. And again, we've been talking about this for several months, but we're seeing the impact on monthly earnings from overall reductions in the portfolio balance. All portfolio category balances are well within policy guidelines. The LGIP rate has remained at 4% for the month of July. That rate's been steady since, I believe, February. And I think with the tick up in short-term rates, that there's a likelihood that rate might go up. I'm not forecasting that, but we are seeing shorter-term rates staying higher for longer. And depending on what happens with the economy and certainly the pressure that the Fed is seeing in terms of bond auctions, that there is a lot of pressure right now on the shorter end of the yield curve. Overall portfolio yields dipped slightly to 3.9%, which was down from 3.92% for the prior month. And again, I've talked about, potentially seeing a peak in portfolio yields a few months ago, but right now, I'm not so sure about that. Again, depending on what happens on the shorter end of the investment cycle, we may see some strengthening in bond yields. The average time to maturity is now 1.31 years, which provides a buffer against near-term rate volatility. But again, I think the near-term rate volatility is actually probably trending upwards. Any questions regarding my report?
The treasury, the 2-year treasury rate that's been going up over the last few months. I mean, given the kind of economic instability that we're witnessing right now, is that basically just going to keep continuing to go up?
Yeah, I believe so. Markets don't like uncertainty, and typically if there's any kind of flight to safety, it'll drive demand for bond yields it'll drive demand for bond investments and drive the yields up. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. It's just a huge, the level of bond refinancing and new bond issuances. Rates are trending up to basically find a home for those investments. So.
So the substantial amount of treasuries that we have right now is a decent place to be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're in a good place. We've been maintaining around 40 million monthly in short-term liquidity. And obviously, as we head into our busy tax collection season this fall, we'll have some pretty significant investing that'll take place then. And right now, I kind of feel like the, forecast over the next 90 to 120 days, it is rates are going to stay at current levels, if not continue to trend a little bit higher. So
Investment Advisory Committee meet in a month or two.
we do, and you're on the invitation letter. We're actually meeting early October. And we've got that meeting in place. It's always good when we get together with our private investment advisory committee members, and they provide some great insight in terms of what's happening out in the market and kind of what they see as well. So looking forward to that next meeting and more to come.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Number 2, our finance report for July.
Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, Robert Campbell, Chief Financial Officer. So we're here talking about the July 2026 financial report. And this is the first month of the fiscal year.
We say congratulations.
You may. If you'd like.
Yes,
Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's fabulous.
On which news?
Did the baby wasn't
Oh,
the baby?
oh, that's true. Yeah.
Talking about the baby.
Couple news.
Yeah, I am a new grandfather. Wednesday, my daughter had her baby, Wednesday at 9:09 p.m. And so it's great joy too. So, and I was able to be there for a couple of days afterwards. So it was really great news.
I deduced that's what she was referring to.
Yes.
I mean, yes. Anyway, that's wonderful news.
Yeah, that is great news.
Same.
Thank you. I
You can
appreciate it.
babysit now.
That's
But
right,
our grandson's a month old already. How does this happen?
right?
Ay.
Okay, so back to business.
Yep.
here. So the first month that we're in, July, so there's obviously not a lot of trends going for the fiscal year. It's the first month of the fiscal year. You'll notice through the reports, if you glance through them, the people's projections are just the budget. There's just a couple changes I'll point out, but there's not a lot of highlights given it's the first month of the fiscal year. I will say, as you look at the first column in the financial reports, it references fiscal year 26. Just a reminder, those numbers are not final yet either, because we're still accruing back the expenses, posting revenues. We're going through all of the accounting work that needs to be done to get the final year numbers correct. They're good generalizations for most funds, but there will be some funds where we'll still be making entries in it. But so it's close, but not final yet. And speaking of that, so our auditors, Baker Tilly, they were here last week in the office. They spent the week here, and they'll be coming back mid-September for the next field work prior to us issuing our draft of the act for the annual financial report, comprehensive annual financial report, coming up to be finalized in November. Anyway, in your packet on page 12 is the first summary. Our revenues year to date in the general fund, 2.5 million or 4.8% of budget. Last year revenues were different, but again, we're still posting and moving things and revenues and expenditures back and forth between fiscal years. So it's accurate what was posted at the time, but I'm not concerned about any differences between fiscal years at this time. But if you turn to page 13 or whatever, turn to page 13 and 14, this is the first FTE summary that we've had for the fiscal year. So as you may recall, during the budget process, there were a number of changes in the FTE, and that's why actually the footnote carries over on a whole separate page. So we did a net decrease just from June to July of 10 positions, and they're listed there. You may recall even during the fiscal year last year, mid-year, we reduced some positions. So this is basically as a result of the budget committee decisions and the board adoption of the budget. Page 15, the overtime and personnel budget report, obviously 1 month, no concerns there, too. I will go to page 20 in your packet, which is the general fund budget to actuals report. The only thing that's different from the budget and what the projections are in the revenue line in the top portion. It's the under other general revenues, 393,000. You'll see that variance in the far right corner. The good news is that's the annual PIL payment that was received. And so the general fund allocation was 392,000 more than we budgeted. We budgeted $500,000, but since the revenue came in higher, both road, natural resources, and the general fund got a higher amount. And this amount was indexed to inflation of how we do the split. General fund takes money, is allocated money off the top, and then the remainder is split 85-15% between road and natural resources. So that there was an increase for all. We'll talk about roads portion when we get to that.
Robert, could you repeat again, overall, how much higher did the bills come in than we had anticipated?
The total PILT came in at $4.3 million, and which was, I guess I don't, the total combined, all three funds, I don't have the total amount that was budgeted. Again, in the general fund, it was 500,000. We received 893,000. And when we get to the road fund, I'll mention that portion there for them. And
That's substantial.
that is, I mean, that helped, and that helped our forecast, talking with Cam, I gave her the number and then she plunked it in again, because when we do forecasting, I always tell you, it's a living document. And so we update the forecast as major assumptions come in. And with that assumption coming in, that helped us in our forecast. Now, as you know, and recall that this is just a one-time approval, that these funds, PILT funds, are approved annually. So we go through this process every year. Is it going to get approved? Is it not? What's it going to be? So it was approved for this year. And so we do have the funds. TLT on page 21 in your packet. Good news is starting off the first month of 15% increase over last year and 15.4% increase over what we budgeted for just that 1 month of revenue. Again, this is June activity that posted in July. So that was a good start to that. The month, we'll see how it continues to go. Again, our ending fund balance projection right now, it's at 1.5 million, but this is after we get to the end of the year, we do budget adjustments. We will incorporate the 8% contingency or the contingency fund for this. So it will readjust some of the amounts in here. We'll have a higher fund balance because we want to keep an operating reserve in that fund to account for all these services under these transfers that the county is paying for, just in case something happens, just like every other.
Planning going up, but it doesn't
That's
go
right.
up, it goes down.
Yeah. So the good news is we're able to do that with this fund because it aligns with our policies for reserves in our funds and having the contingency amount there.
Well, I see the note B on here. We sure have it dialed in about what money's coming in, why, and when it was approved and how it could be used.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's been many years in the making, just really getting crystal clear about those different levels.
Yes, and a side comment I can make, as you might recall, the last legislation that was just approved makes, one of them was, allowing a 50-50 split. And also requires that counties report biannually to the state on how they use their funds and how the dollars are being allocated. The good news is AOC sent out a draft state of the survey that they're going to require counties. And it doesn't appear to be too onerous. It was way simpler than I thought it may be. We'll see what the final request and final report will be, but right now it seems it will be pretty straightforward, which is good news for everybody that has to report. There's not a lot of changes in these next three funds, so I'm just gonna skip past them and go to page 28 in your packet. Health Services Behavioral Health, Fund 274. They noted there, I just want to make sure you see it as well. Again, page 28, Behavioral Health Fund 274. Their state grant revenue, they made a change there, increasing their projections, and they'll be coming with a budget adjustment later for that. And same with on their capital outlay. Projections include the recently approved purchase of property, Daily Estate, and the budget will be forthcoming as well. And those are noted in footnote A and C. Just want to point those out. Same on the next page 29 for public health. They'll be recognizing some revenue on their state grant revenue. And then C, the materials and supplies. A budget will be forthcoming for that as well. On page 31 in the PILT, road fund 325, page 31. This is where I had the footnote for PILT was budgeted at 2.4 million and we received 2.9 million. And in fiscal year 26 and 27, we received for the road portion 2.4 million each of those years. So it was about 500,000 more this year for the road as well, that 517,859. So that was, again, good news for the road on this part. They're still waiting for gas tax or whatever the result of state legislation may be.
Hi there.
So we don't have any idea why PILT was funded at such a higher level this year than.
Just the allocation, it's that massive allocation in one of them and how it comes out. And we'll gladly thank it.
We're curious to hear what was happening in Congress.
Yeah. Page 32 is Community Justice Fund 355. Nothing to report in the financial numbers, but just a note, you may recall that previously there was a fund 030 that was juvenile. Well, through the budget process, those two programs were combined into Fund 355. So now in the requirements section, which is the midsection on this report on page 32, you see personnel services juvenile, and then personnel services adult. So it's one fund now, but it's still broken out and they're tracking it management wise, to make sure funds go exactly where they need to be. So, but it's now combined into one fund. Now to flipping pages to 36, 37, 38. This is the fair funds, Fair and Expo Fund, Annual County Fair Fund on pages 37 and 38. Just the highlight at this point is that the revenues have not been posted yet. That will happen in August, and same with a lot of their expenditures. They'll get caught up in August. They did look at their projections, but the actuals have not been posted for the revenues and expenditures. But they did update the projections in both reports for the annual county fair, which is on a fiscal year basis on page 37 in your report, compared to the annual allocation on page 38. So more details will be coming in next month when it's actually in the actuals column for us. And there aren't any other comments on the rest of the funds. Again, we're just at projections. Well, I guess let me take that back. If you want to mention where we think we are on health benefit
Yes,
fund,
we
there you
should.
go. We believe at this point, the actuals is ending 21.7 million for the fiscal year 26. I think there may still be a deposit as we're waiting for a refund, a stop loss refund of over $100,000. I mean, not totally significant for that fund. I'm not sure that that's been posted yet.
It could have been significant.
Yeah. Oh, at one time.
Yes, it was.
I mean, every dollar it has value, of course, but compared to a 21.7 million. So it'll help. So again, great news to end the fiscal year on for fiscal year 26, which brings us into a good point for this first month in fiscal year 27.
So it's almost 22 million then, if that
Yes.
happens.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Any other comments?
great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
This weekend. Right.
All right, at this time, other items. Are there any other items?
I have one. He's getting rejected.
So I guess, yeah, in the landscape, Issacola Bend, East Lake was Thursday night, Friday night, and then it was down here in Bend on Saturday night or Sunday. So a couple times in Central Oregon, classical piano. Hunter, the piano, great young gentleman. Sponsored by our, Visit Central Oregon Dollars, though, too. That was the interesting thing. So they're a big contributor to making sure that goes year after year. This is the 11th year of their journey around the West doing classical music. I don't want to
At this time, then, we can proceed to our executive session. Do you want to read our notice?
No, I can go second since we get these folks out of here first.
Okay, the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The authorization for this is ORS 192.660, which allows the board to be in an executive session in order to consider real estate transactions. Designated staff, the media are allowed to remain. However, the media may only report that the board met an executive session and the identified basis for meeting. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decision will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion of the executive session, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
We are coming out of our first executive session and County Legal Counsel Dave Doyle will walk us through the transition to the next executive session.
Sure, that was a informational executive session. There was no final actions taken by the board. So there's no direction for you to come. But now you need to convene as the governing body for 911. And so we're gonna go ahead and read the executive session announcement that the board's going to convene as the governing body for the 911 County Service District. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660, which allows the board to meet in executive session. In this case, the board will be meeting to consider labor negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the basis for that. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made. And at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back in.
Okay, we are returning from our executive session as the governing board for the 911 service district and directing staff to proceed as discussed. Thank you.
Can adjourn the regular